this on the hottest day of the year. So welcome everybody. Jim and I thought we would put this video together because we get a lot of people asking us about our seminars and a little bit more detail about what the seminars are, and it's always, I find it always hard to explain over email, and unless you've been to the seminars, it's also hard to explain. So we're gonna just kind of go from the hip here and just kind of talk about what we do within Applied Kinesiology and give some demonstrations, and hopefully it gives you more information about making a decision to join us on one of our seminars. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to the hottest day of the year.
Yeah, I had noticed that. The lights.
So you and I are both chiropractors.
Yeah.
I graduated in the States. You graduated here. You'll tell us a little bit more about that. But we both do applied kinesiology.
Yes.
And we have chosen that as our way of treating patients. So take me through why that is. Why applied kinesiology? Why not some other technique?
So I graduated from the Welsh Institute of Chiropractic, and just like any other chiropractor, you started to work, and it's a fantastic treatment techniques and way of working. And about 60–70% of the patients get better. Some more, some less, but you get that sort of normal thing. And I started asking the question, why wasn't that result 100%? Now, I'm not silly, nobody gets 100%, but I wanted to know why. And I worked with a guy who was really into functional neurology, which I think is a fantastic technique, and you and I have both done some of the functional neurology seminars, they're great. But what I found with the functional neurology is that it was a really cerebral element, and it was very good at starting to explain some of the stuff. But personally, and it's purely personal, I just had to be a bit more sort of touchy-feely and like to put my hands on. So when I started looking around, my principal, who was a diplomat with the Carrick Institute, suggested I try the AK courses. I did the AK courses and I fell in love with it. But the trouble with the basic course is it's got so much information in it, it's difficult to use. So when you and I started writing the course, one thing we'd said to each other is, we've got to make it usable, which is where we came to this whole systemic to local pattern for what we do.
Right. But like, what was it? What was it that really just sort of shifted the way that you wanted to practice? Like, why that?
So if somebody comes in with a low back pain, why have you got low back pain? So the allopathic paradigm, what you have is, and we all know this, we take a diagnosis, and the diagnosis is there to give you the type of treatment you do. But I asked the question, why? It's not a question of you've got low back pain, the diagnosis is a lumbar facet syndrome or something along those lines. Why have you got a lumbar facet syndrome? And so the functional paradigm is different in that it takes you out of the question of what is it and starts to ask the question why you have it. Within allopathy, and don't get me wrong, I still use a lot of my original orthopedic tests and allopathic thinking patterns because you need to use that to eliminate your red and yellow flags. So the diagnosis is vital to get you to a position where you know you can treat. But once you have the diagnosis, you need to be able to ask the questions of what's going on within the body. So I see AK as having a conversation with the body. It's not a touchy-feely thing. There's a mixture of subjective and objective testing, but it gives you a way of actually having that conversation with the body and then start to make thought process. This is a demonstration. If you just stand up with me. Okay. So in my thought process, and the way I look at it, we all start with posture analysis. Everybody does posture analysis. It's the basic fundamental start point we observe. But if Alan just stands sideways on, what we see, upper and lower cross syndromes, we see them an awful lot. The shoulders roll in, the head drops forward. We have about 80% of us have some form of forward head carriage, and that gives us the lower cross with the extended lumbar lordosis. So then we start to look at this, tight muscles here, and then we do our motion palpation and we find some bits and pieces. And anybody in this posture is going to have a problem in the CT junction, T3 area. We're going to have some compression with the L3, and we all know this. I mean, this is fundamentally basic chiropractic stuff. But the chiropractors all started working on which was the primary and secondaries, and the beauty of AK is I can now start to look at how we work, and the model I see here in front of me should reflect the tests I do. So functional testing Now, we talk about AK as the muscle test. The muscle test is the fundamental tool that we use, but it's an adjunctive to your other tests. So if you turn towards the camera again, and you just close your eyes, bring your feet completely together, and we just look at balance. And in this case here, Alan sways a little bit to his left and he's going back. Open the eyes. So proprioception, proprioceptive input into the body should be even left and right. If you're missing proprioceptive feedback from one side or the other, the body will start to compensate. And what it will do is it will go and search for that information. So the proprioceptive input here is being stimulated by Alan coming back to the left and posteriorly. And this is some of what we've blended with the neurology stuff that we talked about with the courses we're doing. That's the idea.
Yeah.
So in this case here, his sway pattern suggests that we have stimulus needed for the afferent input from his left side and his posterior muscle chains instead of the anterior chains. Yet his posture is rolled forward here. So now I have a confused picture. And now I need a tool to work my way around that picture. So we can start simply testing. If he's rolled forward here, I would expect to see the pectoralis major clavicular division and the sternal division tight, or hyper, or restricted. You can use the terminology you want. We also have the upper trapezius muscle tight. So what is the opposite of the upper trapezius muscle? Well, reciprocal impropriation says that if we have a hyperreactive muscle here, I must have a weakness somewhere else within the body. So if I get Alan to rotate his arm in, I now shorten the latissimus dorsi. So he just rotates backwards for me so you can see the video back to the camera. If Alan turns his arm in, latissimus dorsi comes from the arm into the mid-thoracics, down over the iliac crest and back. We know this is the stem that dorsi. It's an internal rotator and it's an extensor. So to shorten the muscle, I will internally rotate and bring the arm slightly into extension and straight. I know there are other extensors, I know there are other internal rotators, but I'm mechanically disadvantaging those in order to focus on the lat dorsi. So if I then apply a test to this, and Alan will talk about testing in another video, but if I apply a test to this, we see, hold it straight, push against me as hard as you can, he struggles to resist me. If I take him out of external rotation, elbow straight for me, push in, he becomes stronger. If I turn him into internal rotation, he becomes weaker. So by trying to isolate or mechanically disadvantage that dorsi, I can see it. And that fits with the posture pattern because the hyperreactive muscle will be trapezius and the weaker muscle or the hyporeactive muscle would be the latissimus dorsi. If I'm saying that this is a, thanks Alan, turn across the camera. If I'm saying that this is a functional test, I should therefore be able to stimulate you functionally to bring that stronger. So how will I stimulate him functionally? Well, if I say that this is inhibited by neurology and not inhibited because he needs to go to the gym and train it more, if I change something within his system, I should see a change instantly within the body because that's the afferent-efferent pattern. So we know that the innervation of that dorsi comes from the lower cervicals, C7, 8, T1. But we also know through its connection through the spine, it has a lot of issues to do with breathing. So one thing that Alan and I are very keen on is we work on systemic. So systemic problems are the system, the craniosacral system, the breathing patterns. These are systemic physical problems. A tennis elbow or epicondylitis or patellofemoral issues, these are local physical problems. So we would look at addressing the systemic issues first. So simply, we can just ask him to breathe in. What's happened as he breathes in? You can relax for a second. His diaphragm is contracted, his head moves up and back, and there's a tension, there's an activation of the accessory breathing muscles. So breathe in, hold, and pull the arm in for me. And in this case, it doesn't make any difference. So that doesn't tell me anything other than the fact that breathing in makes no difference to him. That's all that says. But I know through my knowledge of AK and what the basic physiology and anatomy is here, stimulating that structure has not made any difference. If he pulls his chin in, and now we retest, and now that strengthens. So what have I done? By pulling his chin in, I've caused the cervical spine to come posteriorly, and that will open the facet joints. This has got nothing to do with nerve entrapment, this is to do with the opening of the facet joints, and thus the proprioceptive input from the facet joints, by pulling the chin back, that has changed the mechanics. So now I start to use the muscle test to focus in on where I can start to work. That's a very broad brush example, but that's the sort of stuff we're talking about.
So then, so in my case, like what would some of the things be that you'd want to test? You talked about the breathing and the cranial.
Yeah.
What things would you want to check off, and things that we will teach on the weekend in order to fix this weakness?
So we have a weakness here. We know nothing about it. We have no case history here. I just looked at your posture and went for a couple of muscles. So I'm not going to waste any time in relaxing these muscles. These muscles are hyperreactive due to a neurological pattern of efferent imbalance in your body. That's how I interpret them.
Right.
So I know that this is, so basically from a manipulative point of view, so we work physical, chemical and emotional. That's the triad of stress that we as chiropractors, basic chiropractic work. If I start to stimulate the C7 vertebrae with a beta stimulus, again a functional input, and check the reaction, push in for me, that has a change. So I would use the AK to work out a direction. So if I push from left to right or right to left, I would see a change. If I go from left to right, there's no change. If I pull from right to left, so I know I would need to do an adjustment in C7 from right to left. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's basically how we do that. I also know that through the Lubbock Brother system, which is something we teach on the course, the interrelationship of vertebrae, that C7 is linked in with the TL junction. So I would want to check your TL junction, which fits with the diaphragm connections. And we can see from your breathing pattern that you become high, not just because it's warm in the room, but you become high in the breathing patterns. So if I also, so you can't see this, I'm sorry, I'm just pushing on the lower TL junction, pushing for me. That has no effect here. And that has no effect. So in this case, there is no relationship. But what I'm doing now, that's telling me information. I don't need to tight, even though I can feel that, you can't see this, but I can feel that that's tight. And from a pure palpation point of view, I would probably have gone ahead and adjusted your TL junction. But I now wouldn't, because the muscle test is showing me here. I might do in the future, but I would start with this. And the point of this is that in my thinking, in our thinking, that this is the top of the rib cage, so the accessory breathing muscles are all linked in here. So the craniosacral system, which we haven't assessed now, but if you start to look at that, that's the systemic structure which we would need to address. Chemically, there could be inflammatory patterns going on. We'd need to look at insulin levels and we can test those, not with muscle tests, but you can test them with blood tests, and that should correlate with what you're seeing in your muscle tests. So we look to bring inflammation under control. And there are some emotional techniques you can use if you look at the biopsychosocial model. We all know that that's the in vogue model at the moment, which is just a posh way of saying physical, chemical, emotional in what we've brought up with.
Yeah.
So you have to break down the biopsychosocial model to use physical, chemical, emotional. So physical, we're looking at C7 mechanics. Chemically, 9 out of 10 problems we know come from inflammatory patterns. So we're looking at inflammatory patterns, which supplements we need to use, and or dietary advice we need to give. And to be honest, if that would cure the problem, great. If you look at the psychosocial stuff, you can use exercises to teach a form of meditation, but not teaching meditation, but you use the exercise as a way of making people more mindful. And we do go into details of how to do that. It's a very practical focus. We're not twitching esoteric stuff. The idea is to use the techniques to make people more aware of their body, and therefore you come into the psychological component of the biopsychosocial model. And that's more or less how it's up to break it down.
Great.
So a general picture, because we're not looking at a specific case with case history.
Right. Okay, cool. All right, that's good.
In a nutshell, I know this is us talking, but we didn't just randomly come to this. This is a passion for Alan and I. We both work slightly differently, but we have the same thought patterns that gets us there. And the advantage of our course is there will be 2 teachers. Alan will teach half of it and I'll teach half of it. That doesn't mean that you listen to me for 2 days and then Alan for 2 days. We work with each other and we swap ideas, so it becomes much more of an open forum workshop. And it's a passion for us. We do it because we want to develop the concept more of a functional approach rather than an allopathic approach, and not ignoring the allopathy in the background. So if you are interested, on this page you've got all the links to our websites. Sharon, my wife, works behind the clinic desk in our clinic, and she handles most of the administration for the course. So give us a call at Hansa Chiropraxy, or follow the links on this webpage to our website, and there's the sign up details. the early bird discount, it's worth something, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean it's a pretty big discount.
It's a €400 discount if you sign up for the course before the end of August, so it's not a small amount. If you've just got questions, give us a shout. If you want to come on the course, we'd be lovely to see you, and we'd be looking forward to meeting you. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.